So you guys get the real thing, though. You don't get to have to watch the video. You guys actually get it live. So this is 5-4. We stopped last time at 5-4 at 5-3. Oh, no, 5-4. That's the first part. We read all that. And we did that. But then we stopped here. Okay. My last video, if you want to go back to that, you can go back to read that if you want to, but I'm not going to reread it. Hopefully we're able to get through 5-4 and 5-5 today. That would be nice. I took my time pretty slowly going through 5-3, a little slower even than I would have liked, but I feel like some of this stuff needs to be explained slower. Okay, it says to string. While not strictly speaking, what is it? While not strictly speaking a getter? Does that make sense? Am I just reading that wrong? While not strictly speaking a getter, another important, I don't know, that's just a weird sentence. Anyone agree? Another important method that returns a value is the toString method. This method is called automatically by Java in a number of situations when it needs to convert an object to a string. Have we ever converted something to a string before? Right? We'll work on this. Most notably, the methods system.out.print and system.out.println use it to convert an object argument into a string to be printed when the objects are added to strings with plus and plus equals. Their string representation comes from calling their toString method. Pretty cool. What does that mean? I like to see things, but we'll see it down there in a second. It says, here is the student class again. Hi, what's up? Okay.
And the work I have, I'm not sure I finish it tonight.
Okay. No, just show me whatever you have. Yeah, it doesn't have to be anywhere. The rough draft is just whatever you have. All right. Bye. See ya. Here's the student class again, but this time with a toString method. Note that when we call system.out.println and then S1, the object inside of it, it will automatically call the toString method to get a string representation of the student object. Okay. The toString method will return a string that is then printed out. Watch how the control moves to the toString method and then comes back to the main Java blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to do that, but I am going to run this. Okay. So we have this class called tester class. And then I have my main method, public static void main string args. Have a student, right? From the student class, an object called S1 is going to be a new student. And what I'm passing into the student class, my arguments, the first argument is a name. The second argument is an email address. And the third argument isn't a string. It's a collection of numbers. I'm guessing that's a password, right? And then it says system.out.println S1. So what are we actually printing out? Right? We're printing out this object. So if we look inside the student class, okay, class student, we have my instance variables. I have name, I have email, and I have ID. Notice that they all line up, that this is a string, that the email is a string, and the ID is a number. Then inside of this, check this out. Inside of this class, I have this other, it says public student. What is this called? This is my what? These are my instance variables. This is my constructor. Okay. My constructor is named the same as the class name, right? So my constructor has a string, and an int, which line up perfectly to the string and int that were passed in as arguments. So now init name has the value of Skylar, init email has the value of Skylar at sky.com, and init ID for initialized ID has a value of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we recall it. Okay, so I'm not going to call it init name. Remember I said the easy way of doing it is just say N, E, and I. Remember I did that before, and I think they actually took that convention and did it later on as well. But we did that anyway. So name is assigned, it's passed in. This is my constructor, making sure to connect my instance variables from what was on the outside. I think I mentioned this before. It took me a while to understand constructors in college because I think my professor just threw it at me real quick and was like, oh, you guys learned about this in high school, right? All right, we're going to move on. I was like, wait, what? Like, I didn't learn about this in high school because I took keyboarding 1. And if I would have liked keyboarding 1, then I could take keyboarding 2. And that was it. That's all we had. So my toString method, public string, toString, and it returns whatever the ID is, plus, and then it has the name, and then comma, and then the email. Okay, so that's what would automatically print out if I said print line S1. What that does is it then will look for the toString method. Okay, you have to know that this toString method is tied in right here. So when the object is printed out, really it looks to the toString method and it returns this. So let's run it and see what we get. Okay, prints out 1, 2, 3, 4, Skylar. I'm not sure why they chose that convention. Oh, the ID number. It's not a password, it's an ID number. Okay, it said ID. I just wasn't paying attention. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This person is Skylar, and their email is this. All right, programming challenge, class pet. You've been hired to create a software system. Let me get my piece of paper. I'm going to actually use my notebook because I might need this. I need to always write things down, or especially if I'm doing any math or anything in my head, I'll mess that up every time. Okay, you've been hired to create a software system for the CSAwesome Animal Clinic. They would like to keep track of their animal patients. Here are some attributes of the pets they'd like to keep track of: the name, age, weight, the type of pet, and the breed. What if you have a lizard? What are different breeds of lizards? Bearded dragon, right? Or is that just an entirely different? Would it be a type bearded dragon, but a breed something else? Like, right? Good question. I think so. I don't know what constitutes a lizard. When I was a kid, I used to love, and still this day, I love Siberian Huskies. Huskies, right? I think I almost said when I grow up. When I get older, and my kids grow up, I'd like a dog one day. But right now, I have 3 kids running around. I don't know if I could take care of a dog too. It says create a class that keeps track of attributes above for pet records at the animal clinic. Okay, so we want to create a class that keeps track of the attributes above. Decide what instance variables are needed and their data types. Make sure you use int, double, and string data types. Okay. So they already kind of did that for us. They created the class called pet. Create a constructor with many parameters to initialize all the instance variables. So I guess we need the instance variables first, right? So if I'm writing out my instance variables, and you look back to when we had instance variables up here, right? We wrote private before. So we're going to write private string. What variable name should we use for name? I'm thinking name. Private. Let's go int age, right? Private int weight. Private type of animal. String type, I guess. And then private string breed. When I was a kid, I had a cat. His name was Smokey. I don't know his age. He was pretty light, very skinny. He was a cat, and his breed was a Russian blue. He was like gray. No, what Russian blue looks like. I also had another cat named Socks, but I don't know what he was just maybe a tabby cat. I don't know. All right, we created those instance variables. Now create a constructor. All right. So let's say if we look at our constructor from our previous example, right? Our constructor was public. So we'll say public. Remember, our constructor is the same name as the class. So public pet. And we'll say string. I'm going to use n. I'm going to say string a. Sorry, int a. Got to match them up. Int a. Int weight. I'm going to say w. String t. And then string b. Do those line up? Do those look good? Okay. And then I have my curly braces. Make sure to include those. And then I'm going to assign each one. So I'm going to say name is assigned to n. Age is assigned to a. Weight is assigned to w. Type is assigned to t. And breed is assigned to b. Make sure to include your semicolons. Okay. Wrote my constructor. Okay, create getters for each of the instance variables. Okay. So I need to write getters. If we're going back to a previous lesson, remember that getters, we used a getter here, right? We wrote public, has to be public, string, and then get, and then the variable name. So we were able to write these methods. So if I go down here, I can say public making sure this is what it wants me to do. Okay. The return type has to be listed in there as well. So public string get, I'll say get name. And what does that do? That will return the name. Okay. Is that what it wants me to do? we're going to stick with that. And if it doesn't like it later, then I don't care. All right, next one, we'll have public int, right? Public int get age. Make sure to add my curly braces. And whenever you call the get age method, it will return the age. I'm going to be lazy and I'm going to copy this, paste, get weight. I'm going to return the weight. We do the same for type and breed, but those are going to be strings. So I'm going to copy the string I already have here, the get name string. Sorry, the get name method. Instead of get name, I'm going to say get type. Remember, this will allow me to access the method or the instance variables that are private inside. And the last one, get breed. I messed up already. This right here should say return type. Okay. And this should say return breed. Okay, so let me take a look. That's what I got. Okay. I have get name. I have get age, int. Make sure it's an int. Get weight. Get type. Get breed. Cool. Create a toString method that returns all the information in a pet. Okay. So I'll say public string toString. And this will return, I'll say, it wants all of my instance variables. Is that what it wants me to do? Yeah. Returns all the information in a pet. So I'll say return info about pet. And then I'll just say name. I'm going to be lazy here. It's all just going to run on. I don't care. Age, weight, type, breed. Okay. Like I say, this is his name. This is his age. I feel like it's going to take too long. Let me see what else it wants. In the main method below, create two pet objects with different values and call the constructor accessor methods. All right, let's create the two objects first. Okay. So create the two objects. I'll say pet P1 is a new pet, and the arguments I'm going to pass in, the first one is the name. So I'm going to put my two cats, right? Socks, make up an age. 7. Weight. Good weight for a cat. He was a fat cat. He was pretty big. 35 pounds. That's pretty big. Type of cat, it's a cat. Breed. I think he was a tabby cat. I'm not sure. I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to say pet 2 That was Smokey. Can't remember if we spelled it like that. IE. Just when I was like 10 years old. So, no, probably like 12 years old. Smokey. I think I'll write it like that. Let's just say he was 5. He was skinny, so he was like probably like 5 pounds. And he was a Russian blue. How much does a cat weigh? 5 pounds, like a normal cat?
I think it's like 10.
Yeah. I don't know. Never weighed my cat. Okay, so we created those objects. Then it says call the constructor. Okay, we did that. Accessor methods. So we want to access all of them. So I'll say system.out.println. I'll say field 1. Then I'll run the get name function. I'm then going to copy that. How many fields do I have? 2, 3, 4, 5. Paste, paste, paste. So I'll say field 2, field 3, field 4, field 5. I'm just printing out all his stuff. So the second one was get age, right? Get weight. Get type. Get breed. I think that looks good. Then we can system.out.println. They want me to like use the 2 strings, so I'll say print out P1. And I'll print out P2. Okay, so my main method looks like. And Socks didn't have a K in it. It was just SOCS. Don't know why. That was his name. He had white feet. Paws. Okay. Is that everything? What else does it want? Make sure you use good commenting. Ugh. I gotta go back and comment. It's already commented stuff for us. I'll start here. This is our, I'll just say, these are our getters. I'll say this is my 2-string method. Calling get methods. I don't know what to call them. Calling the get methods. And then printing using 2-string. All right. Let me see if it likes all this. I'm suspecting an error somewhere because I wrote a lot of code. Yep. Semicolon. Never even, yeah, okay, right there. Semicolon line 55 for me. Info about pet. I need a semicolon there. All right, let's see what else I did wrong. Who wasn't it like? Get age. Get name. Cannot find symbol. Let me see what I'm doing wrong here. When we use the main method before. Oh, I know why. I have to say p1.getName, p1.getAge, p1. I wasn't giving it to specifically which pet I was getting this information from. The computer was like, hey, like, which one do you want? Pet 1 or pet 2? And since we did that, since we did pet 1, I'm going to copy all this, and I'm going to do pet 2 as well. It's just going to be as easy as switching this to P1. This will say P2, P2. Say calling get methods P1. P2. Okay, that was a silly mistake. The object dot method name, it was like, where'd this method come from? Well, it's inside the class that I need to refer to the object. All right, let's see what else I got wrong. I passed. So here's what it printed out. It printed out socks, 7, 35 pounds. It does all that. And then information about the pet. That's, like I said, that was lazy of me to do that, right? I could go through and make it look nicer. So I could say like info about pet name, and then add space in between age, space, weight. I could do that. Or that's just a really cool password, right? So once again, walking through my code, I had the pet class, my instance variables. This is my constructor right here. Then I have a list of getters. I have 5 getters. I have a get name, a get age, get weight, get type, and get breed. That allows an object to be able to get, have access to the instance variables inside of the class that are private otherwise. Then the toString method here, which allows me to just print the object. And when I do that, it calls the toString method behind the scenes. It does that. It might not make sense why, but that's just what it does. I completed the main method, created 2 objects, P1 and P2. P1 was socks, P2 was Smokey. I made the mistake of not writing the object before the dot method name. I made 2 of them, so it prints out both cats information, and then I use the toString method twice by just printing out the object. Okay, completed, well done. Things we talked about getters. In the next lesson, we're going to talk about setters. Okay, the return keyword, we use the return keyword to do exactly that. It returns something. Okay, the return keyword. AP practice. Consider the following party class. The getNumOfPeople method is intended to allow methods in other classes to access a party object's numOfPeople instance variable value. However, it does not work as intended. Which of the following best explains why it does not work? All right, let's look at it. So I have a class called party, and my instance variable is numOfPeople. It's private. And then I have my constructor here, party, and I'm passing in an int num. It will receive num, and then as the constructor does, it assigns it to the instance variable up here. So now it'll be known as numOfPeople. Okay, and then it says private int getNumOfPeople. We'll check this out. Private int getNumOfPeople. What does the private accessor do?
Doesn't show it, right?
Yeah, it keeps it private. So my choices are the getNumOfPeople method should be declared as public. That could be an answer. The return type of getNumOfPeople method should be void. No. The getNumOfPeople method should have at least one parameter. No. The variable numOfPeople is not declared inside the getNumOfPeople method. I guess that we'll move on. The instance variable num should be returned instead of numOfPeople, which is local to the constructor. No. Let's go with our first gut one. Correct. Okay, this needs to be public. getNumOfPeople. We don't know what the numOfPeople is, but that's what will be entered in when the party class is called. That's the reason why D doesn't work. Once you call the party class, you'll type in a number of people. Okay, consider the following class definition. The class does not compile. Let's look at it. I have a class called student. I have an instance variable ID. I then have my constructor. It says get ID. No, it's not my constructor. I have a getter. It says public or get ID. It says the get ID is intended to return the ID of the student object. Which of the following best explains? The ID instance variable should be public. No, instance variables are private. The get ID method should be declared as private. No. The get ID method requires a parameter. No. The return type of the get ID method needs to be void. No. The return type of the get ID method needs to be defined as int. So public int get ID. Let's try that one. So it should say public int get ID. Remember down here when we used, or up here when we used getters, right here, we said public string get breed, public int get weight. So we have to be specific there. It's a common mistake. 6 out of 6 activities completed on this page. Completed, well done. And moving on. Questions on that? Did anyone get hung up on any of that? No. Setters. otherwise known as mutators. It's a better name for it. All right, 5.5. It says, as we saw in the last section, since we typically make instance variables private, it says it should take us 45 minutes. We'll see. As we saw in the last section, since we typically make instance variables private, we have to define getters if we want to allow code outside the class to access the value of particular instance variables. By the same token, if we want to allow code outside the class to change the value of an instance variable, we have to provide what is formally called a mutator method, but everyone calls it a setter. A mutator method sounds cool. A setter is a void method with a name that starts with set and that takes a single argument of the same type as the instance variable to be set. The effect of a setter, as you would probably expect, is to assign the provided value to the instance variable. All right. Just as you wouldn't reflexively write a getter for every instance variable, you should think even harder about whether you want to write a setter. Not all instance variables are meant to be manipulated directly by code outside the class. For example, consider the turtle class. It provides getters for get x position and get y position, but it does not provide corresponding setters. There are, however, methods that change a turtle's position, like forward and move to, but they do more than just changing the values of instance variables. They also take care of drawing lines on the screen if the pen is down. By not providing setters for those instance variables, the authors of the turtle class can assume that the turtle's position won't change other than by going through one of the approved movement methods. In general, you shouldn't write a setter until you find a reason to do so. So I'll highlight that. In general, you shouldn't write a setter until you find a reason to do so. Right? So naturally, it makes sense to if you're thinking of setters and getters, typically set something and you get something. But setters is purposely after getters because getters are used more frequently. Setters are not used as frequently, but you should still know how to write a setter. Okay, how to write one. Here's some examples. So I have a class called example template. I have my instance variable declaration. It says private type of var name. And then I have my setter method, public void set var name. And I have whatever the type of variable is. So it could be an int, it could be a string, it could be something else. Let's just say it's an int, right? So private int. So I would say like public void int, public void the variable name int and then the new value, and then I assign it in there. So I can change an instance variable from the outside of the class. Here's a more structured example. So I have this student class. I have my instance variable string name. I then have my setter, which it passes in a new name and changes the value of name. Okay. An example of using this in the main method here, if I create a new student, right, let's call this student S. And then I want to set the name of the student to Ayana. I could do that by using the set name method, because here's what happens. This instance right here looks for the set name method inside of the student class. It looks for it and it passes in an argument of Ayana. It becomes the parameter new name. Okay, new name is then assigned to name and name is the instance variable, which it then holds in there. Okay. So if you're changing a value, you can do it that way. It says, notice the difference between setters and getters in the following figure. Getters return an instance variable's value and have the same return type as this variable with no parameters. Setters have a void return type and take a new value as a parameter to change the value of the instance variable. Okay, so this is another example here, right? So this is an example of a setter. This is an example of a getter. To set, public void. To get, it would be public int string boolean, something along that nature. Okay, so just something to hold on to. Take a mental snapshot of that. We'll come back to it. The best way we're going to do this is by using it over and over and over. That's the way we're going to figure this out. Okay, we're going to try something. It says try the student class below, which has had some setters added. Notice that there is no set ID method, even though there is a get ID. This is presumably because in the system, this class is part of, while it makes sense for a student to change their name or email, their ID should never change. My student ID when I was in high school was 8164. The teacher would post it by the door. You could see everyone's grades by their ID number. And that was our version of Veracross back in my day. You will need to fix one error. The main method is in a separate method tester class and does not have access to the private instance variables in the student class. Change the main method so it uses a public setter to change the value instead. All right, let's look at this. So I have my class. Let's look at this with a fresh set of eyes here. I have a tester class, my main method. My student S1 is a new student creating a new object. The same example they've used before, Skylar at sky.com, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Printing out this, which would be using the toString method. I then want to set this person's name to Skylar2. It says the main method does not have access to email. Use set method. Okay. So I have s1.email. So I should say, well, let's look inside first. So I have my instance variables. I have my constructor. It adds value to the name, the email, and ID. My setters, set name, set email. My getters, get name, get email, get ID. And then I have my toString method down there. So what it's asking me to do, it says the main method doesn't have access. Use a set method. So set email. What it wants me to do? Like this. So I'm calling the set email method. That would pass in skylar2gmail.com. That would send that into set email. That would be received as a string, which we passed it, and then goes to the email. Let's test it. And it worked. So what was needed to be done is here inside the main method, I have to set email. So s1.setEmail, and I passed it in this value. Okay. says consider the class party, which keeps track of the number of people at the party. This is similar to the last lesson. So we have a public class party. It says private int num of people. This is our instance variable. And then a missing header of set method. So this should be something like public. I believe that we were saying like public void and then the method name. So let's look for that public void, the method name, and then int people. Okay, public void method name. Once again, we use that up here, public void, the method name. This is how we use setters. Let's see if I'm right. And yes. So setters use the void type. Drag the definition. All right. So accessible only inside the class. That's private information. Accessible from outside the class. Public. Sets the instance variable to a value in its parameter. That's the constructor. A getter and a setter, right? Initializes the instance variables to values. Wait. I'm sorry. Sets. So this is initializes right here. Initializes the instance variables to values. So the set was our mutator and the get was our accessor. Sorry, these two definitions were similar, and I read the constructor one first. All right, so this is what it should look like. Let's run it to make sure you're correct. Gets, sets, initializes, accessible from outside, accessible from inside. Okay, another pet programming challenge. Copy your class from the last lesson. Oh man, I gotta go back. So I'm gonna go back, copy what I had all the way at the bottom. You get it, you do it too. Go back. 89 lines of code, copying all of that. And then I'm gonna move on back to 5.5. And I'm gonna take well, if I want to copy it in, I don't like that. All right, I'm just going to paste it in there. Okay, so I copy and pasted my code. It didn't say paste, it just said copy. I guess into. Add set methods for each of the 5 instance variables. Okay, so set methods. So I'll go down here. I'll add a comment. Mine's line 50. I'll say, all right, these are my set methods. And if you remember, once again, whenever you write a setter, public, void, and then the name of the setter. So go back down here. So I'm going to say public void set name. And what I'm going to be receiving is a string, and I'll just call it n. And from there, I'll say name is assigned n. Once I have this figured out, I'm going to copy this and paste it. Public void set age. It's not a string, it's an int. I'm going to call it A. So my age will be assigned A. I'm then going to copy this again. Public void set, what was it, weight? Set weight. So that would be int W. And my weight is assigned W. The last two are strings, so I'm going to copy my set name. So I'll say set, this is set type, string T, and I'll say type is assigned T. Our last one, set breed, B, and breed is assigned. I'll slow down here for a sec. So here's what I had. I had set name, public void set name, public void set age, set weight, set type, set weight, type, breed. Okay. What else does it want me to do here? Make sure you're using good commenting. Yeah. Test each of the set methods in the main method. Okay. So I'll just say down here in line 114 at the very end, after everything, I'll just say test set methods. And I'll say p1 dot set name, and I'll set it to, I change Socks's name, so his new name is my mother-in-law's dog's name's Max. I'll say Max. And we'll set the age to, no, 2. P1 dot set weight to 10 pounds. P1 dot set, what was the next one? Type, maybe? Yeah, set the type to dog. And P1 dot set breed to, I don't know, what kind of breed is he? Gotta make a phone call and figure out what breed he is. He's definitely not 2. He's like under 1.
Hey,
Hi. Do you know what type of breed Max is?
he's a mix. First was a Pitts and I don't know the other kind.
Like some sort of like
Terrier?
a terrier.
Yeah.
All right, that's good enough. You know how much he weighs?
Oh, I can text my mom.
That's fine. I'll make up a weight.
Okay.
All right. Love you. Bye. All right. We'll say 50 pounds. Okay. So we are changing basically we're changing P1. Let's just say we made a mistake and we're like, you know what? Socks didn't actually, we'd schedule an appointment for socks, but instead want to bring our dog. So I'm changing all that information in there to Max. But then to see if it worked, I'm just going to reprint out. I'm just going to print out P1 all over again. All right. So I'm able to change things outside of the class, which is important. All right, let's see what I messed up on. Okay. So by using the set method, it worked. If you look, I ran system.out.println P1, and that printed out socks 735, cat tabby. And then I printed out P2, and that printed out Smokey 55, cat Russian blue. And then I printed out, and then I made the changes and then reprinted out P1, and look, it changed it for me. Interesting. I don't like there's a space between Russian and blue. So I'm going to change that. All one word, Russian blue. Very particular. All right. There you go. Passed. Okay, so that's what I added there at the end. You can write whatever you want. Nemo goes over my mother-in-law's house every day and plays with the dog. And actually, when the dog, maybe I shouldn't tell the story. The dog bit my son when he was really young, and now he has like a little scar underneath here. I wasn't very happy with the dog. So I'll leave that story for another time. A void method does not return a value. Its header contains the word void. A mutator method is the same as a setter. Okay, consider the following class. Public class liquid. Private int current temp. That's my instance variable. And then I have my constructor here. So it's passing in temp and it's assigning it to the instance variable. And then I have a setter, and it says reset temperature. That allows me to reset it from the outside. Now, with that though, something would have to be passed in here, right? You need new temp passed in to the reset temp. Nothing wrong with the constructor. The reset temp method is missing a return type. No, I don't care about that. The reset temp method should have a parameter. Correct. Check it. It's true. You need to pass something into it. It's using new temp. Where did new temp come from? Right? It needs to be passed into that. So the argument is passed in and then received as a parameter right there. The party class below, the add people method is intended to increase the value of the instance variable num of people, but the parameter additional people, by the value of the parameter additional people. All right. So a party class, my instance variable is num of people. My constructor is assigning whatever is being passed into the party. It assigns the instance variable here. Then I have public int add people, and then int additional people has line 10. So num of people plus the additional people. So it's changing. So this is a setter, right? So it says, which of the following changes should be made so the class definition compiles without error? I'm looking at line 10. Okay. Replace line 10 with public void, right? When we're using a setter, you need a void type. That's my guess. There you go. Okay, so the problem was in line 10, it says public int. If we're using a setter, getters use a return type there. The setter uses void. Okay, the more you use them, the better we'll get at them. Once we get to the programming practice at the end. Yes, sir.
So I was wondering, like, what's the difference between having a setter and saying public or just having the public for your
Instance variables.
messages up?
Yeah, I mean, compartmentalization is a big key to writing software. So they're teaching you these things, but haven't told you why yet. Like you've learned some of the how now, but they haven't told you why. So that's like beyond the scope right now. The question was, why not just make the instance variables public? Well, a potential problem with making instance variables public, that's a lot of work, right? You're like, why didn't I just make like a global variable, right? That's used throughout. Which, if you remember, in Python, we just wrote like global, and that allowed me to access that wherever, and I didn't have to like teach you. That was my like way out. I was like, all right, let me just teach them global, that it was accessible all throughout without using classes. But now we're learning like the intricacies of object-oriented programming and creating classes. So to answer your question, sometimes this is one reason. Sometimes if you want to use like variable names by making private inside of a class, like I'll give an example here. Like most programs don't have one class, right? Most programs have like high level like programs have many classes. But like let's say you're writing a class called pet, but then you're also writing a class called students. And if you made name public, you would then have to think of a whole new variable name for the student name, right? And then the bigger your program gets, the harder it is to write variable names. So, you have to look back. What did I call that variable name back there? Instead of thinking of all of that, like on a smaller program, on a smaller scale, yeah, it probably doesn't make sense to make these classes, right? On a bigger scale of a program that's robust, and you're trying to think of like let's say also you're working in teams and you don't know the name of the variable that someone else used in theirs, but they made theirs public, and now I'm trying to figure out why my code's not compiling in this tens of thousands of lines of code that other people are working on. 20 people on your team are writing variable names. Might make sense to make them private so they're only accessible inside of this class. So that way I can focus on that and not focus on what other people are working on outside of that. So the compartmentalization of it is a reason why. But yeah, so they're teaching these things and not telling you why yet. I'm glad you're asking the why. It's complicated. 7 out of 7 activities complete on this page. Completed, well done. We did that in under 45 minutes. Yeah. Okay. Since I won't see you again this week, I'm just going to go ahead and stop here so that way I don't have to redo 5, 6. So 5-4, 5-5. That was 5-5. We'll be done for today. All right.